Afghanistan is often described by external observers as an inherently fractured land, a collection of irreconcilable tribes doomed to perpetual conflict. This perception relies on the separation illusion. It is a cognitive error that treats shallow cultural differences as rigid biological borders, a belief used by internal opportunists and external powers to weaponize ethnic sentiment for political gain. But the biological and historical records tell a different story. Modern genetics confirms that what we call race has no biological reality. The physical variations we see across populations are shallow environmental adaptations, not boundaries between different kinds of people. Humanity is one single family. Centuries before scientists mapped the human genome, the region's great poets understood this. Sadi of Shiraz wrote that human beings are members of a whole, created of one essence and soul. To harm one part is to afflict the entire body. Any discussion of Afghan identity must begin on this universal ground. The diverse cultures and languages found across the country represent a unique flowering of a shared human essence. Over thousands of years, the specific geography of the Hindu Kush, its high mountain passes, deep valleys, and arid plains, forged a distinct people. We can trace the linguistic roots of this identity deep into the past. Many scholars propose that the modern term Afghan descends from the Sanskrit word ashvaka, meaning horseman. This term is well attested in ancient texts like the Mahabharata. By 327 BCE, Greek historians accompanying Alexander the Great documented their encounters with these same horsemen, calling them the Aspasoi and Asakanoi. The people of this land have had a named presence tied to this specific landscape for at least 2.5 millennia. Through the eras when the land was known as Ariana and later Khorasan, the region absorbed influences from every direction. It integrated Vedic traditions, the Zoroastrian revelation, and Greek philosophy into a localized culture. This blending of traditions eventually gave rise to the Greco-Buddhist and Gandhara civilizations. The colossal monuments carved into the Bamiyan cliffs offer physical evidence of a sophisticated center where Eastern and Western thought converged. The hundreds of smaller caves surrounding the main figures demonstrate how generations settled and adapted. They practiced their diverse spiritual traditions side by side, building a layered cultural mosaic. Today, some political agendas claim that the term Afghan is a colonial invention. The historical record proves this false. The word appears clearly in the Hudud al-Alam, a Persian geography text completed in 982 CE, nearly 7 centuries before meaningful British involvement. This timeline plots the appearances of the Afghan name in primary sources across centuries. The scholar al-Biruni wrote about Afghans in the 11th century, and the traveler Ibn Battuta documented his encounters with them in 1333. By the early 16th century, the Babunama extensively detailed specific Afghan tribes, their territories, and their political influence, centuries before European powers gained significant influence in South Asia. What the British Empire actually did was impose artificial boundaries. The Durand Line of 1893 physically divided a pre-existing population. They did not invent the Afghan identity, they attempted to partition it. The shared experience of resisting these foreign powers created a national spirit that crossed ethnic and regional lines. This lived reality, forged through common struggle, exists alongside the country's internal vulnerabilities. In the modern era, the term Afghan functions as a political category, not a racial one. It applies to every citizen holding the passport, regardless of their mother tongue. Look at these men, recorded historically as Afghan officers. Their varied features and dress prove the word has long served as an inclusive civic framework. By the mid-20th century, infrastructure began to physically integrate this diverse population. Engineering projects like the Salong Tunnel carved pathways through the Hindu Kush, connecting north and south, turning disparate regions into a single economic unit. Alongside physical infrastructure came vital civic development. Through expanded educational access and the principle of meritocracy, the state began to ensure that competence, rather than ethnic quotas, determined who could lead the nation. Despite this historical integration, modern political discourse continues to fixate on ethnic majorities and minorities. This framing functions as a tool of division, masking the sociological reality of the country. This diagram shows the country's demographics defined by class. The true majority in Afghanistan is the 90% of citizens, across all ethnicities, who live in poverty. This is a socioeconomic bracket that overrides tribal subdivisions. Underneath that top-line number, 65% of the country is under the age of 25. These young people share the same urgent needs for education and employment, regardless of which province they call home. And women, who make up half the population, represent a systematic majority that has faced continuous political exclusion. Historical records demonstrate their presence and essential role in building the nation, a role that cuts through every linguistic line. Because these socioeconomic pressures affect such a massive portion of the population, regardless of tribe, political movements organized around shared developmental ideas address the needs of more citizens than those based on ethnic exclusion. Afghanistan's strength comes from its diversity, not in spite of it. The path to healing requires recognizing that the nation is a mosaic. All citizens are members of one whole, sharing a soil and a history that no external power can fracture.